your day.
All right, tell them bye.
Surprise. Good.
Go. All right. They all, like always, wanted to get on and say hi. Matt found this background and he thought it was pretty cool. It's the fruit of the spirits. Hopefully you all can see it, and hopefully it's not backwards, but knowing me and technology, it probably is backwards. But it's just a tree, and it has gentleness, kindness, love, patience, faithfulness, self-control, generosity, joy, and peace. And on the bottom it says the fruit is always in season, or this fruit is always in season. And I thought that was very fitting for what we are talking about. So I hope everybody's having a good Sunday afternoon. If you like to rest, I hope you are getting to rest. If not, I hope you're able to do whatever you do on Sundays or on Sunday afternoons. But we're on week 4 of our devotionals about the fruits of the Spirit. And this week we're going to talk about patience. And I am sure at some point in our lives we have all prayed for, asked for, or wished for more patience. Today I want us to think about and talk about how we can be better Christians if we have patience. And there's another word, and I think I told y'all this at the devotional last week, that when I was looking up the word patience and thinking about it, more times than not, it didn't say the word patience. It used long-suffering. So I'm going to talk about long-suffering as well, and we are going to, when I say that, it's going to relate to patience and us having patience and how we can deal with that. And the best example we have of long-suffering or patience is Christ. And we need to look at what he endured for us. And my mind immediately goes to the cross. Number one, it was not a quick process. And to me, when we read it, it like drug on and on and on. And I feel so sorry for Jesus. And yet he never complained. He took it. We see the pain. We see what they did was brutal. He was beat severely. Then he was hung to die. And while he was hanging there, they put a crown of thorns on his head, and then they gave him vinegar on his lips. And could you just imagine how painful that was? It wasn't they just cut off his head, and that was it. It wasn't in today's world they just shot you and you're gone. It is long suffering. He had to endure it for hours. And yet when you think of that and you read that account of it, did he ever lose patience? Did he ever complain? And the thing that stands out, and we all know, it says, let your will be done. And the will was done, and yet that's how we, get our salvation is through this, or get a chance to get to heaven. But, again, if it was me hanging on that cross, he was beaten and never complained. He was drugged and never complained. He was hung and had nails in his hands, and he never complained. They offered him vinegar as evil to put on his lips so they knew it would burn, and he never complained. No matter how painful it was, he was patient. He endured it all. We all need to be like Christ. We might think we're having a bad day, but our worst day pales in comparison to what Christ patiently went through on the cross. Long-suffering to some means the ability to endure personal injuries or irritations without being provoked to anger. Patience to some means the ability to wait without becoming irritated. And Matt had a doctor's appointment on Thursday. And I think about this every time. And as you all know, if you all know, Matt and I, we've been to a lot of doctors the last 2 years. And most of the time we had to wait. And we were lucky we didn't have to wait very long. But when we talk about the patience of someone being able to wait without becoming irritated, how about when we sit in that doctor's office? And our appointment's at 1 o'clock, but yet we're still sitting there till 3 o'clock. We begin to lose our patience, don't we? And there's one particular doctor that Matt goes to, and thankfully we don't go very often. And they have gotten better since COVID. So if there was a blessing to COVID, this doctor's office, they got it. But we would go, and honestly, we would be there about 5 hours. If your appointment was at 1, they closed at 4. They usually took Matt about 4:30. So we thought, okay, well, we'll get an early appointment. We'll go at 9 o'clock. They have lunch at 1. We sat there until 1 before they took Matt. So no matter what time we had our appointment at this particular doctor, we were going to sit there. So now we've kind of revamped that. We don't take the kids anymore, and I haven't been taking Matt. Matt's been going, or we've been getting someone to go with him because I am not that patient, and my kids are not that patient to sit in a waiting room for 4 to 5 hours before Matt's even being seen. That doesn't count the time that he's in the back doing the exam and all that needs to be done. And I thought about that. So I am not the definition of patience. I am not someone who has the ability to wait without becoming irritated. Now, I can wait an hour, and then an hour I'm getting a little antsy. When the kids were younger and we were in Alabama, we took them to the doctor's office, and again, you waited an hour before you're even called. Now, they had a big note on their door, and it said, you be here on time. If you're 15 minutes late, we're canceling your appointment. Well, on the bottom of that note, they should have put, well, you're going to sit here an hour no matter what. If you're 15 minutes early, 15 minutes late, or on time, you're going to sit here an hour before we even call you back, and then you're in the back another hour. But I lose my patience. So I want to look at some examples in the Bible of patience, and I need to learn from these, and I'm pretty sure some of you all need to as well. In James chapter 5, there's 3 examples of patience. So we're going to kind of hang out in James chapter 5 for a little while. And I'm going to read James chapter 5, verses 7 through 11, and then we're going to talk about it. It says, be patient, therefore, brothers, until the coming of the Lord. See how the farmer waits for the precious fruit of the earth, being patient about it, until it receives the early and late rains. You also be patient. Establish your hearts, for the coming of the Lord is at hand. Do not grumble against one another, brothers, so that you may not be judged. Behold, the judge is standing at the door. As an example of suffering and patience, brothers, take the prophets who spoke in the names of the Lord. Behold, we consider those blessed who remained steadfast. You have heard of the steadfastness of Job, and you have seen the purpose of the Lord, how the Lord is compassionate and merciful. So there are 3 examples in verses 7 through 11 that we just read. And the first one is right there in verse 7. The very first one we read, it starts off, be patient. Be patient, therefore, brothers, until the coming of the Lord. This verse does not tell us when Jesus is coming back, but it tells us to be patient. Does that mean I can only be patient for a day? Or just during those 4 or 5 hours at the doctor's office? Or a week? Or if we're really good, can we be patient for a month? No, it says be patient until the coming of the Lord. Be patient every day. We don't know when the Lord is coming, so we have to continue to be patient. So every day, this verse tells me I need to be patient. Then in verse 10, it says, as an example of suffering and patience, brothers, take the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord. So this verse is telling us when we lose our patience, think of the prophets. And you think of my example earlier of Jesus on the cross and what all they had to endure, what the prophets had to endure when they were telling others about Jesus. I'm sure there were times they wanted to quit and wanted to give up, but they didn't. They were patient, but during that patience, they had to suffer. When we are suffering, whether it be for a long time or a short time, are we patient? Probably not. I know for me, I'm not if I'm suffering, but we should be. We are to be patient while we suffer. And then at the very end of those verses, in verse 11, we talk about Job. And most of you all probably knew that with the title of this devotional being Patience, I was going to bring up Job. And in verse 11, it said, behold, we consider those blessed who remain steadfast. You have heard of the steadfastness of Job, and you have seen the purpose of the Lord, how the Lord is compassionate and merciful. When someone mentions patience, like I just said, we think of Job. And we all know his story. He was a rich man. He had family, all the livestock you could want. He was living nicely, and it was all taken away from him. But all through this, Job was patient. Now, a lot of people are like, oh, well, he complained or he grumbled. And I'm not talking about that. He was patient. He waited. He trusted God. He believed God. He knew something better was coming at the end. So he was patient. Did he grumble? Yeah. Did he complain? Yeah. Did he question? Absolutely. But he was patient. I don't think I could have been as patient as Job. His wife was taken away. Okay, well, I still have my kids. Now my kids are taken away. Well, at least I still have my animals. I still can live. I have money. Now my animals are taken away. And that may not be the right order they were taken in. But regardless, everything was taken from them. And then, I'm going to start losing some patience. What have I done? Why does this happen to me? I'm going to question. And I'm probably not going to be too patient. I'm going to try to figure out what's going on. But Job didn't. And in the end, he was rewarded. And we know at the end, when we read the story of Job, he received double of everything he started out with. He received double. So it was worth it to him to be patient. He got a wife back. He got children back. He got double all his livestock. It was worth it to him to be patient. So that was a pretty easy example. I think everybody correlates with Job, knows Job. But let's talk about someone who did not have so much patience. And I think that I fall in line with this person, and not saying that is a good thing. And you all probably know who I'm going to talk about. And we're going to talk about Peter. And we're going to specifically go to John chapter 18, verse 10. And that verse says, "Then Simon Peter, having a sword, drew it and struck the high priest's servant and cut off his right ear." So the background of this is when Judas was getting ready to betray Jesus. Jesus knew what was going to happen, so he asked the disciples, "Who do you seek?" And he didn't ask it once, he asked them twice. And when he asked this the second time, he says, "It's me. I'm the one you're looking for." And he asked for his disciples to be let go. And before anything could be said or done, Peter cuts the ear off Malchus. So I said that wrong. This was not the disciples asking. He was trying to save his disciples. So Jesus, we're in the setting where Judas is going to betray Jesus. Judas doesn't think Jesus knows this is going to happen. Jesus does know. So Jesus is asking the people who came to arrest the disciples, to arrest them, to kill them. They said, "Who are you?" And Jesus told them, "I'm the one you're looking for." Or Jesus asked them, "Who do you seek?" And Jesus says, "It's me. I've told you it's me. Now let my people go. Let my disciples go." And before he could finish that sentence, Peter takes his sword out and cuts the ear off Malchus. Was Peter patient? He wasn't patient. He jumped the gun, so to speak. He wanted to take matters into his own hands. And that's not what Jesus wanted. He was not patient. He did not wait to see if they were going to be let go. He did not trust Jesus. He wanted to take matters into his own hands. I fall into that category. I'm a Peter. I'm going to jump the gun. I'm not going to be patient. I'm not going to wait for the outcome. I'm not going to wait for the answer. I'm going to go and solve it myself. And we shouldn't be that way. And this got me thinking about a parable. So we're going to go to Matthew chapter 18, and we're going to read 2 verses. We're going to read 21 and 22. And it says, "Then Peter came up and said to him, 'Lord, how often will my brother sin against me and I forgive him? As many as 7 times?' Jesus said to him, 'I do not say to you 7 times, but 77 times. Do we need to work on our patience? Let's look at these verses. How are we when it comes to forgiving someone? Are we quick to forgive, or do we need some patience in that area? We know that this is not a literal 77 times, but it means forgive them as many times as they ask for forgiveness. And that is a hard thing to do. Are we that patient to keep forgiving the same person over and over and over? As Christians, we are supposed to be that patient. But are we? So let's consider the rest of the parable. That was just the beginning of it. Let's continue to read it. And this is the parable of the unmerciful servant, which we all know. So we're going to continue reading in verse 24, or 23, I think. "Therefore the kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king who wished to settle accounts with his servants. When he began to settle, one was brought to him who owed him 10,000 talents. And since he could not pay, his master ordered him to be sold with his wife and children and all that he had, and payment to be made. So the servant fell on his knees, imploring him, 'Have patience with me, and I will pay you everything.' And out of pity for him, the master of that servant released him and forgave him the debt. But when the same servant went out, he found one of his fellow servants who owed him 100 denarii, and seizing him, he began to choke him, saying, 'Pay what you owe.' So his fellow servant fell down and pleaded with him, 'Have patience with me, and I will pay you.' He refused and went to put him in prison until he should pay the debt. When his fellow servants saw what had taken place, they were greatly distressed, and they went and reported to their master all that had taken place. Then his master summoned him and said to him, "You wicked servant, I forgave you all that debt because you pleaded with me, and you should not have had mercy on your fellow servant as I had mercy on you." And in anger his master delivered him to the jailers until he should pay all his debt. So as my heavenly Father will do to every one of you if you do not forgive your brother from your heart. So we see here that the servant was forgiven his debt, and he pleaded, "Have patience with me." He went to the master, he owed him money. "I don't have it right now. Give me more time. Please be patient." So the master says, "Okay." So this very person that he wasn't forgiven his debt, but given more time, goes and finds somebody who owes him money, and he's not patient and forgiving at all. He does not show the same kindness. How many of us are that way today? We want forgiveness from everybody. We don't want to be wrong. We want, they owe me an apology, and then we want to be forgiven, but yet we're unwilling to forgive somebody who's done us wrong, or somebody who has hurt our feelings, or somebody who has made a mistake, or somebody who's made a comment that shouldn't have been made, or did something they shouldn't have done. As Christians, we shouldn't be this way. We are to be patient with everyone. And to be patient, we have to accept things that are out of our control. We may not like it, but we have to accept it and move on. As Christians, we know that God has control, and we have to trust that He knows what He is doing. We also have to realize that not all of our needs can be or will be met instantly. We are on God's time, and God calls us to be long-suffering. We may not like it, but it's true. God shows patience with us, so how dare we not show patience to others? This week, I think we could all use some work with patience with all that's going on in our world and in our daily lives. Most of y'all know I've said this before. We're in Louisville last week, and thankfully we were there last week and not this week. It has gotten out of hand. It is not a good situation. And, they need patience. They need help. They need more than patience, but they need help. And there's other things like that. That's just what's going on right now. But we need patience in our daily lives. I need patience with my children. I don't know if you can hear them right now, but they're screaming outside the door. I need patience with my family. I need patience with my church family. I need patience with our coworkers. Patience with people who are driving down the road. Patience with people at the grocery store. People at the bank. We all need patience. So this week, I hope we all can work on our patience. And I thank you all for listening. And I hope you all have a great week. And I will talk to you all next week.